1913. And it's a big difference. The America that existed before 1913 was when black people were on the rise. Things were getting better. When you look at the direction that black people was headed in during that time and the wealth we was generating and growing, things were getting better. There wasn't so many systems in place to hinder us. When Lincoln freed the slaves and gave us a bank, it was truly so that we can grow wealth and prosper. We had land. In so many different cases, we owned land. And you got to pay attention to what was going on around that time and the fact that everything didn't change until the powers that be completely took over. And when you pay attention to history and look at history, you can see exactly how this stuff breaks down. So we had the Freedmen's Bank. We had this bank, and you had, in 10 years after slavery, you had black people, accumulate almost $60 million in wealth in 10 years, which is a ridiculous amount of money back then. $60 million almost. I believe it was $57 million. That's a lot of money to have. Now, when Lincoln signed the charter, when he signed into law for this bank, the bank was given a charter, and there were rules that the bank cannot give out any loans. This is another thing that tells you that Lincoln was genuine in what he was doing. He understood that if these bankers could loan out money, what they would do. He understood about the whole fractional reserve banking and what was going on with the banking system, the whole reason why he printed the greenbacks and everything. He understood this. Another hint to the fact that this man was legitimate in his freeing the slaves, accepted, was no ulterior motive. So he gave a charter, couldn't put out any loans. The bank can only invest stocks, bonds, treasury notes, investments or what have you, to grow the wealth of these black people. Plain and simple. It was smart. And Lincoln thought he would be alive to oversee this, that he might be alive long enough at least to grow it to where it could be transferred in the hands of black people. The problem was the board of trustees, the people who sat on it was about 50 white men. And most of them, if not all of them, were in the hands of the Rothschild, in the pockets of the Rothschilds, I should say. And a plan was put together after Lincoln was killed, to basically destroy that bank, of course. So about 2 years after Lincoln was killed, after he was assassinated, you had the bank, Freedmen's Bank, move from New York to Washington, D.C. Starting to make sense when you think about it. If you know history, you see what's coming. So the bank was moved. And then you had these 50 boards of trustees fight and argue with Congress to change the charter. Why? Because if they change the charter so that the bank can now loan out money, they can take this money and make outrageous, careless investments. And that's exactly what they did. They made careless investments. Some of these bank owners were presidents and managed other banks. They have presidents of other banks, they manage other banks. So when these other banks made bad investments, they could just loan themselves money from the Freedmen's Bank, the black people's bank. And this is what was going on. And, by the time, 1874 came around, it was too late. They tried to bring in Frederick Douglass to revive the bank. He invested some of his money to try to get him to basically, fix things. But Frederick Douglass, because they basically was going to use him as a scapegoat, obviously, and try to blame everything on him. But he was smart. As soon as he walked in the door, he took a look at the books and he said, quote, that the bank is basically a cow. Black people own the cow, but white people own the milk, which is basically how he put it. So you got to understand what was taking place during this time in Washington, D.C. One, you had so much going on, but you got to remember during this time still, you're seeing economically the growth of African American people growing in industry and business, flourishing. If we accumulated almost $60 million in 10 years, just imagine what we would have now. And they understood this. So we all know we had in 1871, you had the acts of the 41st Congress, Section 34, Session 3, Chapters 61 and 62, which basically granted to the District of Columbia a government. So a lot of people, we like to say that this is where America was changed into a corporation. America was not changed into a corporation. America still remains America, a country. What happened was you had the District of Columbia, which was changed into a corporation. And you had it create another United States of America, which it represents as the corporation on top of the country itself, which is why all of these, sign your name, social security number and everything like that, is so that we can be put under corporation and be dealt with in a different, let's say, legal standing as a corporation and not as a human entity, but as a company. So all this was done for that. So this is what all the social security number, birth certificate stuff you have been seeing all over the internet is all true. This is what that stuff is all about. So when they passed this law without any constitutional backing, without any constitutional rights, they did this. So it's completely against the Constitution. It's something it wasn't supposed to do. And we don't really understand how it got done, but it got done. And this is what happened when you have crooked people in power. They can do things like this. And when you understand that, then everybody was, almost everybody was in the pockets of the Rothschilds, and they had their eye on America, of course, ever since they lost it. And this is what you got to understand. As I said, we were flourishing, things were going good until 1913, when we had the Federal Reserve Act passed, and it's when they really got their hands on the bank, which really is what really changed everything in America. Because bankruptcy was already in place. Believe it or not, in 1871, America was going through a bankruptcy. We was losing money. It wasn't as public as people understand, but this was the point. To bankrupt the country, to cause a collapse in 1913, to get the bankers to come in and set up these private central banks, and that's game over. Because then once the bank controls the country, the bank can set laws. Again, I put it up there 1,000 times when Alan Greenspan came on public broadcasting, I believe Channel 12, and basically told you, I don't understand what's wrong with people. He said it, that it doesn't matter who the president is. He can't basically control or change anything that the Federal Reserve does. It doesn't matter what the relationship is, he said. He said it very arrogantly. Because what? If the bank forecloses on your house, the bank owns your house. You can't then walk into the bank and start bossing people around because they own your house. They own that place. If they come into your house, you can't boss them around. It's theirs. So how can we do anything against the Federal Reserve when it's the Federal Reserve that owns the country? We are still in bankruptcy to them. We still are paying debt to them. So you got to understand, when all this stuff was done, their first goal was to basically, of course, dismantle Freedmen's Bank. And they did so. They crashed it. You had all these people these bankers or the people who was managing the bank make, as I said, a bunch of crazy investments, and the bank went under. And that was it. Why didn't they give it another charter? Why didn't they bail it out? Why didn't they fix it? Of course, they wanted it gone because they understood how powerful it was. And then you got to understand how many people had absolutely no clue that it ever existed, because they tore down the building and built another treasury building in its place. And we had later on a congressman or senator, I forget who it was, who recognized what happened and renamed it Freedmen's Bank. And this is history. And history tells you exactly why we are where we are at today. So when black people, when we say, we have been oppressed, we have so many things put in our way to hinder us from growing, this is what it is. The difference is you have to separate the real America from the new America, the America that was taken over in 1913 by the powers that be, taken over by the very people who enslaved us in the first place. Plain and simple, this is what you got to understand. You can't put that America with this new America now. And you see what happened. Them, basically collapsing the Freedmen's Bank was the beginning of the real oppression of African Americans after slavery. Everything kept happening after that. So you have Freedmen's Bank go under 1874. You have, of course, you can go back and forth between, you had Garvey, Garvey seen the truth. Garvey was like, man, we're not going to get nothing done here. It's a setup. We need to go to Africa. Everything is there anyway. It's ours anyway. It's way more wealthy than America. Let's go to Africa. They had to stop that. Plain and simple. We had Black Wall Street. And Black Wall Street, even though you had the collapse of the bank, Freeman's Bank, the blueprint was out there. And you had black people who had understanding about economics, and they understood, well, okay, all we got to do is do this all over again. Let's get black people together. Let's put our money together. We still got some money. Let's pull our resources. Let's get this town together and let's grow. And that's exactly what they did. Now, what happened after that? The powers that be, the same people who dismantled the Freedmen's Bank, dismantled this bank. The KKK is a part of this whole thing, and they have been a part of it for a long time. Talked about this before, how the KKK and the Masons and the Shriners all in cahoots together. When you pay attention to who they serve and what they are about, and they are about disrupting. The simple fact that they stand for the oppression of black people and the hatred of black people, and how they have historically and notoriously been known for lynching and killing black folks, shows you that nothing that they say is going to come out their mouth that's going to be for black people, only against. So there's no reason of even talking to these people. Now, I know it's hard for people to separate the two because we associate, America with America. But when you understand history, you can see exactly what happened. It doesn't make sense for Lincoln to free the slaves. And then, that be the agenda, a crooked agenda of the powers that be. Doesn't make sense. They wanted us in chains, clearly, because they wouldn't have fought if they didn't want us, in chains. It doesn't make sense for that to be an agenda of the powers that be, freeing the slaves. Clearly, Lincoln went against what they wanted to happen. Because then, why would you free the slaves if that's what they wanted? And then, destroy the bank that Lincoln gave us, destroy Black Wall Street, destroy us trying to leave America and go back to Africa. This tells you there's a different plan. That the powers that be clearly, as I talk about in many videos, understand who we are and what we are capable of in our real history and origin. And they understand that any type of advancement by black people is going to result in their downfall. We drive the consciousness of the planet, plain and simple. I talk about this all the time. They understand what we are and what we can do. And that's not to get all spooky, but it's clear as day that everybody follows what we do. History shows this. We can see this everywhere we go. If you travel the world like I do, and you go to so many different countries, and you see people trying to live a hip-hop lifestyle, trying to be cool, trying to use our words and dress like us and be like us, you can see clearly what it is. And it's crazy, as we talk about in America, that you have people who seem to love our culture but hate us. And that has to be some kind of brainwashing, some kind of mind trick for people to do such a thing. And that's exactly what it is. But when you go back and you just look at history, we can see step by step exactly what happened. Lincoln was killed, the bank was stopped, and everything happened after that. You had the powers that be regain control of the country after they lost it. Revolutionary War, and then the Civil War when they wanted to really get it back, hoping that we would lose. The War of 1812, of course. 1814 or whatever the year was, I believe it was 1812. And because Napoleon was, the Rothschilds or England was still fighting Napoleon, we won that war. And you got to understand, when you look at history, so much that was going on for these people to try to take back America, them trying to get back into the bank under Andrew Jackson, and Andrew Jackson kicking them out and basically getting rid of the private central bank, for decades. And they didn't recover for a long time. So, all this stuff fits. It's all in history when you understand history and what's taking place. And we can go back and look and see clearly. Freeman's Bank go under. Every move black people has made ever since then has been thwarted. It has been thwarted. Our leaders have been killed. We have been oppressed ever since then. Laws have been made. Things have been put in place to hinder us. And it's clear. You can see it's right at this mark when the powers that be took back control that they kept us oppressed. So You have Black Wall Street. You have Marcus Garvey, the fall of Marcus Garvey. We have the Jim Crow era, the whole civil rights movement. We have all of these things that we can see that every time Black people try to grow and rise, we are oppressed. We are met, with walls, with hatred. We are met with laws and rules and things that hinder us. We are met with so much to keep us from growing. If you understand the power of a bank and what we could have achieved with that bank, you understand clearly, again, as I said, the plan was for us to grow. And economically, we would have been able to do that, and they completely stopped that. So, it's just something I want people to really look back at and think more clearly about. People always talk about the 4th of July and everything like that. And I always say, yeah, you should celebrate America's independence, because if it wasn't for America getting its independence, the slaves wouldn't have been free. And you can feel whatever kind of way you want about that. It's the truth. Yeah, we were enslaved during that time, but the people who were trying to free us did not have full control of the law and of all of the territories to free us. But we can see immediately steps were made. 1777, right after they got their independence, 1777, we see the beginning of the abolishment of slavery. We see that Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that they took out the fact that they hated slavery, they wanted to get rid of slavery. So I tell Black people, one, you can celebrate the 4th of July, you can feel about it any way you want to feel about it, but don't disrespect all the Black soldiers who back then, when you think about the condition that they was in, because we now in the future, you feel the way you feel, but you got to understand that Black people fighting these wars, yes, think about how they felt, and think about the fact that they sacrificed their life for us, so we can sit here and argue about stupid shit. It was done, Black and white, and this is what they fear. They understand what unity can do, and this is what they're fighting against. So we're going to continue to see, the rhetoric of hatred and the speeches and so many Black people coming up saying what white people did and, cops beating down Black people. Is going to continue. It's not going to stop until we sit back and understand who the real enemy is and what's going on. I don't think people understand, Black and white people, how lost they are, how brainwashed they are by the media, by social media, by, the news media. A lot of people are brainwashed and they are delusional about their feelings, and they don't understand that the way that they feel and the way that they think, they have been manipulated to feel and think that way. The simple fact that a lot of people are reacting off of what they see in the news tells you that they have been manipulated. I mean, you turn on the TV, you go online, and you see the same stuff. So many racist posts. You see so many videos of police brutality or racism, and it's all designed to get you to feel some type of way. Rightfully so, people should be angry, especially Black people. I don't understand, and again, I don't understand how any white person feels any type of way. What is the problem? And this is why I say, there's no need to argue with these people. They are racist. You have too many white people who get it, who just march with us, who understand, yeah, this shit is wrong. Anybody else is racist. Those are these people who go to these sites, who get fed this false information, who have these ideologies, and you have people who are closet racists, who understand how evil and dumb racism is, and they feel a certain type of way about Black people, and they're trying to convince themselves that it's justified. They don't want to be labeled as a racist. It hurts their feeling. They want to understand what's going on. They want to try to justify their racist feelings because they have been bombarded with so much news media, so many negative images of Black people that have them feeling some type of way about us and our existence. The simple fact that Black people are saying, stop killing us, stop oppressing us. If you have a problem with that, there's something wrong with you. So we got to understand that a lot of people are really suffering from the programming. The simple fact that we marching, and I always ask people, who are we trying to get to understand us when we march? Who are we marching to? Are we marching to get the media to understand? Are we marching to get the government to understand? Are we marching to get the very people who are responsible for us marching in the first place to understand? You're trying to get the people who have spent years years to get you in this position, to oppress you. They have spent millions of dollars, billions of dollars, years to oppress you, to take away your freedom and rights. And you think just because you marching, that's going to get them to say, oh, well, and change their mind. Now, if you understood history, then you can look at it and say, this shit is not going to stop. There's another move we got to make. And you have these people out there in front of the NFL headquarters, protesting for Colin Kaepernick for what? For what? I don't get it. Clearly the owners, these NFL owners, are racist. They're old. They come from an old way of thinking. And the fact that they would chastise, Colin Kaepernick or not allow him to play in the NFL because he's standing for black people, why would you want him to go back to the NFL? Why would you want him to go back and play for these people and make them more money? You should be looking at those other black people who didn't walk out, those other black people who are not kneeling. Those are the people you should be talking to. And they go to every team. I mean, it's a thing. Every time a game comes on, anybody that's putting up a fist, that's kneeling, is being targeted. And you got to understand, one, these NFL owners, they get money from the government for making sure they have a flag ceremony before every game. The government start paying extra money for that after the Colin Kaepernick incident started blowing up. And that's something that Stephen A. Smith talked about. You haven't seen so many national anthems before the NFL game. They usually didn't show it. Now, all of a sudden, post 9/11, of course, we get the anthem. But a lot of people don't know that the government they paying for these ceremonies. One, to, solicit people to join in and to keep the patriotism factor going. But you got to understand, as I said before, the powers that be don't give a shit about this country. They're not from here. And they're using patriotism to get black and white people to join the military to go die for their agenda. And that's exactly what we're doing. And now we're in the future, you might as well say, where we can blow up a country, push up a button. They can send drones out there to light up an entire country. This is what's happening now. And you got to understand, where we stand and what's taking place and why we're being distracted from the facts. They understand history. They don't give a shit about what people say and what people are talking about online or in news media. They understand facts. And it's exactly what I deal in, facts. They understand the fact that unity can stop all this. If we sat down and looked at the real enemy, we would see it's the media and it's this government. Plain and simple. There's no way around that. And you can call me coon, you can say whatever the hell you want to say. One, a lot of people don't have the benefit of traveling the world and living in different countries. And being in the country where I'm at now, I always talk about Sweden, living in a country where you see it work, where you see a news media that is controlled by the people, where you see people living peacefully, unity, no black neighborhood, no white neighborhood, no Latino neighborhood, no Asian neighborhood, no Indian neighborhood. You could be living next door to a rich person. Don't even know it. He just got money. They're not broken up like that here. You have a system that benefits the people, that if you lose your job, you get another one. You get money until you find another one. The government helps you find one. It's not beneficial to the system if you are poor, if you are homeless. You can't be homeless in this country. And America's supposed to be the greatest country on earth. But when you've been to countries where you see systems work for the people and you see racism is non-existent, of course, anywhere you go, you're going to have squabbles over race. It's going to happen here and there. Stuff is going to happen. I mean, it's the same. I mean, you can't look at when a black person fight a black person and just say, that's nothing. That's two people getting into a fight. So just because one is black and one is white, it don't have to be about race. Stuff happens. People feel some type of way. People, when they are angry, they say stuff out their mouth that they don't really mean. They're just saying it. But when you go to a country where you see the system working for everybody, and the fact that you have so many black people here, Africans here, who have corporations, businesses, employees that's not just, black, white, mixed, people from all over. You see black people here being treated just like everybody else. You see the system, you see the commercials representing black people as well. I mean, it just tells you that, it can work, that it's possible, and that America, the reason why it's not working is because you have a system in place that is designed for it not to work, to separate the people. So we got to pay attention to what they could be forcing us to do, and that's one, to get violent, to act out of character, to give them a reason to use those FEMA camps and those FEMA coffins, because once we act, they can go ahead and justify anything they do to us. We've seen those coffins. Those coffins have not been used, and the government don't spend money for no reason. You got to understand what they might be trying to force. And we see, one, that they can use the media to make anything look like whatever they want it to look like. So even if they orchestrate something to where black people was killing people or something like that, they can use the media to make it look real. Now, we have been very successful in, proving they bullshit wrong. And once we do that, you see it disappear. This is why it's important that we can get videos out. But this is another reason why, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, why they did what they did with YouTube. So one of the things is, they can really manipulate, everybody to make things look a certain way. And we won't get the truth until, it's too late, and things is done and over with. And if we follow this thing to the plan they have, set up for us, and black people start fighting, protesting, or I should say shooting or anything like that, some kind of violence, they can go ahead and justify anything they do to us. They can say that we're militant, that's some kind of black hate group and we're going around killing people, what have you, and just go in and start killing black people and wiping people out. Something to that effect. We got to pay attention to what we do and how we move. And us going out there in these rallies and marching is not the move. It's just not what we should do. This is chess. We have to move smartly and strategically and think about what we're doing. And the problem is, we have a serious lack of leadership. We have a problem with that. And, anybody that we consider a leader that we started to look at, you can see that they have been bought off. All the real leaders are executed. Plain and simple. This is why I talk about, hip hop, because I try to get people to understand that if it was good for us, we wouldn't have it. You have an organization, you have a company, you have something like the music industry, even with sports, that's generating billions of dollars for black people, millions of dollars individually for these people. They've taken everything from us. Why would they give us these things if it was good for us? They are given to us because they know it's going to destroy us. Plain and simple. You're going to get a lot of people to reach for goals that is not smart, that is not real. You got a lot of people trying to be rappers and actors or what have you, and not trying to really get the essential skills they need to grow economically, to help their family, to do better things. And so many people chase the entertainment industry and, they end up left behind. And it's not realistic. But on top of that, you have, the music stimulating black people and causing us to act out what we're hearing and to change our reality into exactly what we're listening to, in our headphones. So again, it's clear, I talked about this before. What we're listening to is what we're seeing in the black community. It's just that simple. It's driving the community. It's driving everything. And they understand that. That's why it exists, because they know it's destroying us. So we got to pay attention to that. We have a serious lack of black leadership. So many coons out there, so many sellouts to black people, and we just lost one of the last real black, leaders who really spoke out. Dick Gregory,